In the vastness of existence, duality is the lens through which humanity often perceives the world. We define ourselves through contrasts: light and dark, life and death, good and evil. But what if these distinctions are mere shadows cast by the limitations of the human mind? In the higher realms of consciousness, there is no duality. Everything is part of the same infinite energy, connected through a web of interconnectedness beyond our comprehension. The idea of life and death as opposing forces has been ingrained in us through centuries of cultural, philosophical, and religious teachings. We view life as something that can be measured, contained, and defined, while death is feared as an end, a final boundary. This perception creates tension, anxiety, and a false sense of separation. The truth is that life and death are not two opposing forces, but two expressions of the same universal flow. There is no end to life in the way we imagine it. Life is a constant evolution of consciousness from one state of being to another. The concept of duality stems from the mind's limited ability to grasp the infinite. We use language and conceptual frameworks to categorize experiences, but in doing so, we confine them to rigid structures. This tendency to divide and label prevents us from experiencing the fullness of reality. In truth, everything is interconnected: life and death, light and darkness, joy and sorrow. They are all facets of the same cosmic dance. When we release the illusion of duality, we begin to transcend the boundaries of the self and enter a more expansive understanding of existence. In ancient wisdom traditions, the idea of duality was often understood as a construct of the material world. Eastern philosophies, such as Taoism, have long taught that opposites are complementary rather than conflicting forces. The Taoist symbol of yin and yang perfectly embodies this concept. Light and dark, masculine and feminine, life and death, all exist within one unified whole. Neither is superior to the other. Instead, they flow together in harmony, each giving rise to the other, in a cyclical process of balance. When we look at the universe from this perspective, we realize that there is no inherent conflict between life and death. They are part of an ongoing process of creation and destruction, birth and rebirth. Just as the seasons change, with winter making way for spring, death is not an end but a necessary part of the natural cycle. It is in the release, the shedding of the old, that space is made for the new. Life and death are not separate. They are part of a continuum that moves forward with infinite possibilities. As human beings, we tend to resist the natural flow of life and death. We fear the unknown, and in doing so, we attach ourselves to the transient forms of existence. We become obsessed with preserving the ego, the self, and we see death as a threat to our sense of identity. This attachment to the ego is what creates the illusion of separation. But if we let go of the need to control, to define ourselves by our bodies, thoughts, and emotions, we can begin to see beyond the illusion of duality. In the silence of the present moment, the boundaries between life and death dissolve, and we experience the unity of all things. In the Western spiritual traditions, the idea of unity in duality can also be found. Mystics and philosophers like Plato and Carl Jung spoke of the oneness of existence. They suggested that the apparent separation between life and death, self and other, is merely an illusion created by the mind. When we move beyond the ego, we can tap into a deeper, universal consciousness that transcends these false distinctions. In this state, life and death are experienced as two sides of the same eternal truth. The dualistic mind often operates from a place of fear. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, and fear of losing control. This fear keeps us trapped in a cycle of attachment and suffering. But when we release the need to control, we open ourselves up to the infinite possibilities of existence. Life becomes a flow, not something to be controlled or preserved. Death, in this light, is simply the next phase of that flow, an essential part of the cycle that allows for growth and transformation. When we approach life and death as inseparable aspects of the same whole, we stop seeing death as an enemy. Instead, we begin to see it as a guide, a teacher. Death helps us live more fully, to appreciate each moment as precious and fleeting. It reminds us that everything is temporary, and in this realization, we find peace. This shift in perspective allows us to embrace life with more openness and joy, without the constant fear of its inevitable end. As we dive deeper into the illusion of duality, we come to understand that everything is in constant flux. Nothing remains the same. Everything is energy, shifting and evolving. The form we see as life is merely a temporary arrangement of energy, and death is the return to the source. This understanding frees us from the fear of death, as we realize that we are never truly separate from the whole. We are not isolated beings struggling against death. We are part of a cosmic dance, flowing through time and space in a never-ending cycle of transformation. Letting go of the dualistic mindset allows us to experience life in its fullest sense. We begin to appreciate the impermanence of all things and embrace the mystery of existence. Life and death, like two dancers, move in perfect harmony. They are not enemies, but partners in the great dance of the universe. Through this understanding, we find liberation, not in escaping death, but in realizing that life and death are one. Through this exploration, we come to realize that the illusion of duality only exists in the mind. Once we step beyond the constraints of the ego, we enter a realm where life and death are simply expressions of the same eternal truth. In this state of awareness, we can live fully, embracing the moment and releasing our attachment to the false distinctions that keep us trapped in fear and separation. The key to transcending duality is presence, being fully alive in each moment, without judgment or resistance. In this space of presence, we find peace. We are no longer concerned with life or death, as we recognize them as two parts of the same eternal flow. In the end, we are all part of the same cosmic rhythm, moving together through the infinite dance of existence. The concept of self is one of the most elusive and misunderstood aspects of human existence. In our everyday lives, we identify with the body, the thoughts, and the emotions that arise within us, believing them to be the true essence of who we are. But what if the self is not a solid, unchanging entity, but a temporary construct, a series of experiences and perceptions that arise and dissolve in the flow of consciousness? At its core, the self is a collection of stories, memories, and labels that we attach to ourselves, but none of these truly define our existence. The deeper we look into the nature of the self, the more we realize that it is not a fixed point, but a dynamic process. This sense of self is constantly changing, shifting with the circumstances of life. The mind, with its constant chatter and identification with external factors, creates the illusion of a permanent I. But when we silence the mind, when we drop our attachment to the thoughts and emotions that define us, we can experience the fluid, ever-changing nature of consciousness. This is where true freedom lies, in the understanding that the self is not a static entity, but a process that can be observed, rather than something we must defend or cling to. The ego, or the false sense of self, is what creates the boundary between the individual and the world. It constructs an identity that we mistakenly believe is ours, and this identity shapes how we experience the world. But this egoic self is not real. It is an illusion, a mask that we wear to navigate the complexities of life. The more we identify with the ego, the more we become trapped in a narrow, limited view of reality. We begin to see ourselves as separate from the world around us, rather than as an inseparable part of the whole. As we explore the nature of the self, we begin to uncover the deeper layers of our consciousness. What we perceive as our thoughts are not truly ours. They are simply passing phenomena, like clouds in the sky. Our emotions are not permanent states, but transient experiences that arise and fade away. The body, too, is not the true self. It is a temporary vessel, subject to the laws of nature. The true self, the essence of who we are, is not confined to any form or identity. It is formless, timeless, and ever-present. It exists beyond the labels and categories that the mind creates, and it can only be experienced directly through awareness. This realization is liberating. When we recognize that we are not the thoughts, emotions, or body, we free ourselves from the grip of the ego. We are no longer limited by the stories we tell ourselves about who we are or who we should be. We are no longer trapped in the cycle of identification, constantly seeking validation or approval. Instead, we can simply be present, aware, and open to the flow of life. This is the true meaning of liberation, not to escape from the self, but to transcend the illusion of the self and experience life as it is, without filters, without judgments, and without the need for constant self-affirmation. The key to understanding the illusion of the self lies in the practice of mindfulness and self-awareness. By becoming aware of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, we begin to see that they are not who we truly are. We can watch them arise and pass away without becoming attached to them. This process allows us to observe the mind from a distance, rather than being completely absorbed by it. As we practice mindfulness, we begin to develop a deeper connection with the present moment, and in doing so, we uncover the truth of our existence. At its core, mindfulness is the practice of observing without judgment. When we let go of the need to label or categorize our experiences, we open ourselves to the fullness of life. The self, as we know it, begins to fade away, and we become more attuned to the larger, interconnected whole. In this space of non-attachment, we can experience the unity of all things, the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit, and the oneness of the universe. The true self is not an object to be found or grasped. It cannot be defined by words or concepts, because it is beyond language and thought. It is the silent observer, the awareness that is present in every moment. When we connect with this awareness, we realize that we have always been this awareness. We have just been distracted by the illusion of the ego. This realization is the key to inner peace, because it allows us to let go of the struggle for identity and embrace the simplicity of being. Once we recognize that the self is an illusion, we are free to experience life in its full, unfiltered glory. We can approach each moment with an open heart, without the need to defend or protect our identity. We no longer see ourselves as separate from the world, but as an integral part of the whole. This shift in perception allows us to live more authentically, without the weight of the ego. We begin to see the world as a reflection of our own inner state, and in doing so, we discover the beauty and interconnectedness of all things. This realization also helps us to transcend the fear of death. If we are not the ego, the body, or the mind, then what are we? We are the timeless, eternal consciousness that flows through all things. Death, in this context, is not an end, but a return to the source. It is a natural part of the cycle of life, a transition from one form of existence to another. By letting go of the ego and the attachment to the self, we can face death with acceptance and peace, knowing that we are not bound by the limitations of the body or the mind. In the end, the illusion of the self is not something to be destroyed, but something to be understood. When we recognize that the self is a transient construct, we no longer cling to it. We can live more fully, with less attachment and more openness. The self, as we know it, is a story. But the truth is beyond stories. It is a direct experience of being, of consciousness itself. And in this experience, we find freedom, peace, and a deep connection to the universe. The fear of death is one of humanity's most profound struggles. For centuries, humans have fought against the inevitable, clinging to the hope that life can be preserved and death avoided. But what if death, instead of being something to fear, is a gateway, a transition into another phase of existence? Ancient wisdom teaches that death is not the end of consciousness, but a transformation, a shedding of one form to give rise to another. In this view, death becomes not a termination, but a necessary step in the ongoing journey of existence. In modern life, we often view death through a scientific, material lens, as the cessation of the body's functions, a final event after which nothing remains. However, the idea that death is the ultimate end is based on a limited perspective. Spiritual traditions around the world speak of the soul's journey, of an ongoing existence beyond the physical. Whether through reincarnation, the afterlife, or spiritual awakening, death is seen as an important threshold that connects this world to the next, rather than an abrupt termination. This view of death as a doorway, rather than an endpoint, opens up a new understanding of life itself, one in which death is an integral part of the eternal cycle of existence. If we begin to perceive death in this way, we can let go of our fear and embrace it as a natural part of life. Death is not a force working against us, but a cosmic rhythm that sustains the flow of existence. In the same way that a tree must shed its leaves in the fall to prepare for new growth in the spring, we too must release the old and make way for the new. The fear of death arises when we become too attached to the material world and to the body. But when we recognize that the soul transcends the physical form, death no longer holds the power to disturb our peace. It becomes simply another transition in the continuous unfolding of consciousness. When we embrace the idea that death is a gateway, we begin to see that there is no need to fear the unknown. Death, like birth, is a natural part of the cycle of life, one that is beyond our control, but deeply connected to the greater whole. If we let go of our attachment to the material world, we can come to accept that death is not something to be resisted, but something to be welcomed. This acceptance allows us to live more fully, to embrace each moment with the understanding that life and death are part of the same continuous process. By living with awareness of our mortality, we can cultivate a deeper appreciation for the preciousness of life. The process of dying is not something that happens only when the body gives out. In fact, every day we are dying and being reborn. Each thought we have, each emotion we feel, is part of a constant cycle of change and transformation. The fear of death comes from the belief that it is an isolated event, something that happens at the end of life, when in reality, death is happening all around us, all the time. The key to understanding death is to recognize it as a continual process of release and renewal. It is the surrender of the old, the shedding of what no longer serves us, and the emergence of new possibilities. In many spiritual traditions, death is seen not as a sudden event, but as a gradual transition that can be consciously navigated. The idea of a good death is central in these traditions, a death that is accepted with grace and awareness, free from fear and resistance. In this view, the process of dying is not something to be feared, but something to be honored. It is a return to the source, to the divine consciousness from which we emerged. By living with this awareness, we can begin to approach death not as an enemy, but as a friend, a companion who walks beside us, reminding us of the impermanence of all things. One of the ways to prepare for this transition is through practices such as meditation and mindfulness. These practices help us to cultivate awareness of the present moment and to release the attachment to the self and to the ego. By quieting the mind and becoming more attuned to the body, we can begin to detach from the fear of death and embrace the process of dying as a natural and beautiful part of life. Meditation also allows us to access the deeper layers of consciousness, where we can experience the continuity of existence beyond the physical body. In this space, we can connect with the eternal self, the unchanging essence that is always present, even as the physical form fades away. In this new perspective, death becomes a release, a letting go of all that is transient and impermanent, so that the eternal self can emerge. This understanding frees us from the fear that death holds over us. It allows us to live more fully, to embrace each moment with open-hearted gratitude, knowing that our journey is not limited to this physical life. Instead, it is a vast and eternal unfolding of consciousness, a continuous flow of existence that transcends time and space. By accepting death as a natural and necessary process, we can learn to live in harmony with it. We no longer need to resist or fight against it. We can instead live with awareness and gratitude for the preciousness of each moment. We are not defined by our bodies or our egos, but by the eternal consciousness that flows through us. Death, then, is not something that takes away our life. It is simply the transformation of one state of being into another. It is the gateway to the next phase of our eternal journey, a journey that continues long after the body has gone. In the end, death is not an enemy to be feared, but a teacher to be honored. It is through our understanding of death that we come to understand life in its fullest sense. Death is not separate from life. It is an essential part of it. When we let go of our fear and resistance, we open ourselves to the deeper truths of existence. We see that life and death are two aspects of the same process, and that both are part of the greater mystery of the universe. In this realization, we find peace, not in the avoidance of death, but in the acceptance of it as a natural part of the eternal flow of consciousness. The fear of death has been one of the most persistent human challenges throughout history. It is a primal fear, woven into the fabric of our existence. But why are we so afraid of death? In essence, it is the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing control, and the fear of stepping into an abyss. Death, from this perspective, represents the ultimate surrender, the final release from the material world, and it is this release that most people find terrifying. But if we take a step back and examine the root of this fear, we see that it is deeply connected to our attachment to the ego. The ego, which defines our sense of self and identity, is inherently afraid of its own dissolution. It thrives on control and stability, and the thought of losing these constructs through death creates an existential crisis. The fear is not about the physical process of dying, but about the ego's inability to exist beyond the body. In truth, the ego is a construct, a temporary identity that is constantly evolving. When we learn to detach from this sense of I, we begin to let go of the fear of death. One of the most powerful ways to overcome the fear of death is by shifting our perspective on life itself. Instead of viewing life as something to be preserved at all costs, we can learn to embrace it as a gift, a precious, fleeting experience that is to be cherished in every moment. When we recognize that life is temporary, we become more attuned to its beauty and significance. We stop taking it for granted and start living with intention. This shift in perspective allows us to transcend the fear of death, because we see death not as an end, but as a natural part of the ongoing flow of existence. In many spiritual practices, the fear of death can be transcended through mindfulness and meditation. These practices teach us to let go of the attachments that bind us to the material world and to become more present in the moment. Meditation allows us to witness the thoughts and emotions that arise within us without becoming attached to them. This practice of non-attachment is a powerful tool for overcoming the fear of death, because it helps us realize that we are not our thoughts, emotions, or even our bodies. We are the awareness that observes them. By connecting with this deeper awareness, we free ourselves from the fear of death, recognizing that death is merely a transition in the cycle of consciousness. When we sit in meditation, we begin to understand that the thoughts and fears that arise in our minds are not who we truly are. They are simply passing phenomena, like clouds in the sky. By practicing mindfulness, we can begin to distance ourselves from these transient thoughts and emotions. And in doing so, we gain the freedom to live without fear. The awareness that we cultivate in meditation allows us to see death not as a finality, but as a part of the eternal flow of life. It is simply another form of transformation, an inevitable and natural progression that is part of the larger cosmic dance. Another profound way to overcome the fear of death is by understanding the impermanence of all things. When we begin to see that everything in the material world is transient, we shift our perspective on life and death. The fear of death arises when we attach ourselves to things that are temporary, whether they are possessions, relationships, or our own physical bodies. But once we realize that nothing lasts forever, we begin to accept the flow of life and death with a sense of peace. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. We suffer because we hold on to things that are fleeting and impermanent. When we learn to release our attachments, we can begin to live with a sense of freedom and acceptance. Death, in this context, becomes not a loss, but a return to the source. It is the ultimate release from the cycle of attachment, a final letting go that brings peace and liberation. The key to overcoming the fear of death is not to deny it, or try to escape it, but to embrace it fully as a part of life. When we stop resisting the natural course of existence, we begin to live more freely. We can appreciate each moment for what it is, knowing that it is a temporary expression of life. By letting go of our attachment to the self and to the material world, we create space for a deeper experience of the present moment, free from the fear of death and loss. Ultimately, the fear of death can only be overcome when we come to understand that life and death are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin. Death is not something that happens at the end of life. It is happening all the time. Every breath we take, every moment we live, is a form of dying and being reborn. The fear of death arises when we see it as something distant and final. But when we see it as a part of the ongoing process of life, we can begin to live without fear. By embracing the impermanence of all things, we can live with more presence and appreciation. We learn to let go of the need to control life and death, and instead, we flow with the natural rhythm of existence. The fear of death falls away when we realize that we are not the body, the mind, or the ego. We are the awareness that observes these things, and awareness is eternal. In this realization, we find true peace, not in avoiding death, but in accepting it as part of the eternal flow of life. To truly overcome the fear of death, we must cultivate a deeper awareness of our true nature. We are not the ego, the body, or the mind. We are the awareness that observes all things. Once we step beyond the fear of death and the illusion of separation, we can experience life in its fullest, most profound form. We no longer need to fight against death or resist it. Instead, we can embrace the process of life and death with open arms, knowing that they are part of the same eternal cycle. In this space of acceptance, we live with a sense of peace and freedom that transcends the fear of death. We are free to live fully in the present moment, without attachment or fear. This is the true liberation, to live without the burden of fear, to embrace the mystery of life and death as one interconnected flow of existence. And in this realization, we find the deepest peace, a peace that cannot be shaken by the inevitability of death. In the search for understanding, humans have always grappled with the concept of existence beyond the physical realm. We are born into the material world, bound by the laws of physics and the constraints of time and space. However, many spiritual traditions, ancient and modern, suggest that this physical realm is not the entirety of our existence. Our consciousness, they claim, is not bound by the body. It transcends the physical form and exists in a greater, more expansive plane of being. This concept suggests that the essence of who we are, our true self, is not tied to the body, but to an eternal consciousness. Life beyond the physical realm is often described as a state of pure awareness, where there is no distinction between the self and the universe. In this realm, there are no limitations, no boundaries between life and death, and no separation between individual beings. Everything is interconnected in a vast cosmic web, and consciousness is experienced as a unified field. Many spiritual teachers, mystics, and philosophers throughout history have described glimpses of this higher realm of consciousness. They speak of the soul's journey, of returning to the source of all things, and of experiencing a sense of unity with the divine. This is not a place to be reached after death, but a state that we can access in our present life through deep meditation, self-awareness, and spiritual practice. By quieting the mind and transcending the ego, we can tap into the higher realms of consciousness that exist beyond the physical body. In many cultures, the idea of life beyond the physical realm is not just an abstract concept, but a deeply spiritual reality. In Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, the soul is believed to be eternal, moving through cycles of birth and rebirth. This concept, known as reincarnation, posits that our consciousness transcends the limitations of the physical body, continuing its journey through different forms of existence. The soul evolves and learns through various lifetimes, each one offering opportunities for growth and spiritual awakening. While reincarnation offers a vision of continuity beyond death, Western spiritual traditions offer different interpretations of the afterlife. Christianity, for example, speaks of heaven, where the soul returns to be with the divine. Other esoteric traditions, such as those explored by mystical thinkers like Carl Jung, suggest that the afterlife is a return to the collective unconscious, a realm of archetypes and universal symbols. Regardless of the specific belief, these traditions agree that the physical realm is only one part of a greater, more expansive reality. What unites these perspectives is the idea that death is not an end, but a continuation of consciousness in another form. Whether through reincarnation, an afterlife, or a return to the source, life beyond the physical realm is understood as a state of infinite potential, where the soul is free from the limitations of the body and mind. This understanding of life beyond the physical realm helps to dissolve the fear of death. When we recognize that we are not merely our bodies, but eternal consciousness, the idea of death becomes less frightening and more of a transition into a greater state of being. As we delve deeper into the idea of life beyond the physical realm, we also begin to confront the question of consciousness itself. What is consciousness? Is it simply the activity of the brain, or is it something more profound, more expansive than we can comprehend? Many scientists and philosophers have debated the nature of consciousness for centuries, yet its true nature remains elusive. However, one thing is clear: consciousness cannot be confined to the body. It is not merely a product of the brain. It is a field of awareness that exists beyond the physical form. Some scientists, such as those in the field of quantum physics, suggest that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, interwoven with the fabric of space and time. According to this view, consciousness is not localized within the brain, but is an integral part of the universe's fundamental structure. This aligns with spiritual teachings that see consciousness as the underlying force that connects all things, transcending the boundaries of the individual self and extending throughout the cosmos. This concept of universal consciousness invites us to expand our understanding of reality. If consciousness is not limited to the brain, then it is possible that our awareness extends far beyond the physical realm. It may exist as an interconnected web of awareness that encompasses all of existence. In this view, life beyond the physical realm is not an abstraction, but a return to this universal consciousness, a reconnection with the source of all being. The idea of life beyond the physical realm also offers us the possibility of spiritual growth and evolution. The notion that we are eternal beings, capable of experiencing multiple lifetimes or states of consciousness, suggests that death is not an end, but a step along the path of self-realization. Through each life, the soul learns, grows, and evolves. Whether we experience this through reincarnation, through spiritual enlightenment, or through connection with the divine, the process of becoming more aligned with our true nature is ongoing and infinite. In this sense, death is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as a natural part of the soul's journey. It is a transition from one state of being to another, a return to the greater whole, and a deeper understanding of our true nature. By accepting the idea of life beyond the physical realm, we can live with a sense of peace and purpose, knowing that we are part of a greater, infinite journey. The concept of life beyond the physical realm also invites us to live more fully in the present. If we are eternal beings, connected to the infinite source of consciousness, then every moment of our lives is an opportunity for growth and spiritual awakening. By living with this awareness, we can transcend the fear of death and live more fully in the present moment, knowing that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Ultimately, life beyond the physical realm invites us to explore a deeper connection with ourselves, with others, and with the universe. It challenges us to move beyond the material world and embrace a more expansive understanding of reality, one that sees death not as an end, but as a transition into a new state of being. When we let go of our attachment to the body and the ego, we open ourselves to the greater mysteries of the universe. And in doing so, we connect with the eternal consciousness that underlies all existence, finding peace, purpose, and fulfillment in the process. The present moment is where life truly unfolds, yet most people spend their lives either lost in the past or anxious about the future. The past is gone, and the future is yet to come, both of which are outside the realm of our control. The only moment we truly have is now, the present moment. In this moment, we are alive, we are aware, and we have the opportunity to experience life in its fullest form. The key to living a fulfilling and meaningful life lies not in chasing the future or dwelling on the past, but in fully embracing the present. Embracing the present moment requires us to step out of the mental traps of overthinking and worrying. It means letting go of the need to control everything and allowing ourselves to simply be. In the present moment, there is no fear, no regret, no anticipation. There is only what is here and now, a space where we can fully experience our senses, our thoughts, and our feelings without judgment or attachment. This mindfulness, this ability to be fully present, opens us up to the deeper truths of life. It allows us to connect with our true essence and the universal consciousness that flows through all things. When we embrace the present, we let go of the constant need for validation and achievement that often defines our lives. We realize that we do not need to constantly prove ourselves or strive for external success to feel worthy. In the present moment, we are enough. We are whole, just as we are. This shift in perspective allows us to find peace, as we no longer seek happiness or fulfillment in the future, but find it in the now. It is in this moment that we can experience the true beauty of life, not in a future goal, but in the simple act of being alive and aware. Living in the present moment also means accepting ourselves as we are, without the constant need for change or improvement. In modern society, we are often told that we must constantly strive for betterment, whether it's in our careers, our appearance, or our relationships. This constant striving creates an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, as we never feel that we are truly enough. However, the present moment offers us a different perspective. In this moment, we are whole. We are not defined by our achievements, our failures, or our status. We are simply beings existing in the here and now, and that is enough. By embracing the present moment, we allow ourselves to let go of the pressure to be perfect, or to constantly strive for more. We stop comparing ourselves to others and measuring our worth against external standards. Instead, we begin to recognize that we are already complete, just as we are. This realization frees us from the constant pursuit of external validation, and it allows us to experience a sense of peace and fulfillment that is not dependent on outside circumstances. We can find joy in the simple act of being, and in doing so, we connect with the deeper, more expansive aspects of ourselves. This sense of acceptance is not about resignation, but about embracing the truth of our existence. When we stop trying to change or fix ourselves, we can begin to experience life as it truly is, without judgment, without resistance. In this space of acceptance, we allow ourselves to be present with whatever arises, whether it is joy, pain, or anything in between. This is the essence of mindfulness, to fully accept and experience each moment as it comes, without trying to alter it or push it away. Embracing the present moment also requires us to let go of the narratives and stories that we tell ourselves about who we are or what life is supposed to be. We often define ourselves by our past experiences, our successes and failures, and the roles we play in society. These narratives can become limiting, preventing us from fully experiencing the richness of the present. When we release these stories, we open ourselves up to the truth of who we are, beings of pure consciousness, unbound by past or future. The present moment allows us to experience life directly, without the filters of our judgments, expectations, or preconceived notions. In this space of awareness, we are able to see the world as it truly is, without the distortions of our past experiences or future anxieties. This clarity brings us a sense of freedom, the freedom to simply be, without the weight of our stories or identities. We are no longer defined by the past, nor are we controlled by the future. We are simply present, fully alive, and fully aware. In this state of presence, we also become more attuned to the interconnectedness of all things. When we let go of our personal stories and the separation they create, we begin to see that we are not isolated beings, but part of a larger whole. The present moment reveals the unity of life, that all things are connected, and that each moment is a reflection of the larger cosmic dance. By embracing this unity, we can experience a deeper sense of peace and connection, not only with ourselves, but with all of existence. To truly live in the present moment, we must also cultivate gratitude. Gratitude allows us to fully appreciate the beauty and wonder of life, right here, right now. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it is easy to overlook the small moments that make life extraordinary. However, when we slow down and take the time to truly appreciate the present, we begin to see the magic in the ordinary. The simple act of breathing, the warmth of the sun, the beauty of nature, all of these things become gifts when we are fully present and aware. Gratitude shifts our perspective from one of lack to one of abundance. When we are grateful for what we have, we open ourselves to more of the same. We begin to see the richness of life, not in the future or in material possessions, but in the present moment. This shift in perspective brings us closer to the truth of who we are, beings of infinite potential, capable of experiencing the fullness of life in each and every moment. By cultivating gratitude, we also cultivate a sense of peace. We let go of the need for more and accept what is right now. In doing so, we align ourselves with the flow of life, allowing ourselves to be carried along with it rather than resisting it. Gratitude anchors us in the present, helping us to stay centered and grounded no matter what circumstances arise. In this space, we can experience true peace and fulfillment, knowing that we are enough and that life in all its beauty is enough. Embracing the present moment is not just a practice, but a way of life. It requires us to move beyond the distractions of the mind and into a space of awareness, acceptance, and gratitude. When we live fully in the present, we connect with the deeper truths of existence and experience life in its purest form. We are no longer bound by the past or the future, but free to be fully alive in the here and now. In this space, we find peace, joy, and a deep connection to ourselves, to others, and to the universe. Life and death, two forces that appear to be opposites, are intricately woven together into the fabric of existence. In our modern understanding, we often view them as polarities, one representing birth and creation, the other representing dissolution and finality. Yet, in the grand scheme of the universe, they are not separate or conflicting entities. Rather, life and death are two sides of the same coin, interdependent and complementary. The secret of life and death lies in the realization that they are part of a continuous, cyclical process that transcends the linear concept of time. In nature, we see this truth reflected in the cycles of birth and decay that occur in every living organism. Flowers bloom and wither, seasons change, and animals are born and die. This cycle is not a tragedy, but a necessary process of transformation and renewal. Each ending makes way for a new beginning, and without death, there can be no life. It is in this dynamic relationship between life and death that the secret of existence is revealed. Life and death are not enemies to be feared, but partners in the process of creation, growth, and evolution. The idea that life and death are interwoven is found in many spiritual traditions around the world. In Hinduism, for example, the concept of reincarnation teaches that death is not the end, but the continuation of the soul's journey. Each life is an opportunity for the soul to learn, grow, and evolve. When one body dies, the soul is reborn into another, continuing its journey toward enlightenment. In this view, death is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as part of the soul's evolutionary process. Life and death are also intimately connected on the level of consciousness. When we recognize that we are not just our bodies or minds, but the awareness that transcends them, we begin to understand that death is not the annihilation of the self, but the transformation of consciousness. Our true essence is eternal, and it exists beyond the physical realm. Consciousness is not bound by time or space, and it continues its journey even after the physical body ceases to function. This shift in perspective allows us to see death not as a finality, but as a transition, a return to the source of all consciousness. When we release the attachment to the physical body and the ego, we are able to embrace the truth of our eternal nature. The fear of death diminishes when we realize that we are not our bodies or minds, but the infinite consciousness that flows through all of existence. Death is merely a return to the unmanifested, to the source from which all life arises. It is a process of shedding the limited form of the body, allowing the soul to return to the larger, boundless field of consciousness. In this view, death is not something to be feared, but a natural part of the cycle of existence. When we understand that life and death are part of the same cosmic process, we begin to see that death is not an interruption, but an essential part of the ongoing flow of life. Every moment, every breath is a small death, a letting go of what was before to make way for what is to come. This continuous cycle of transformation is the heartbeat of the universe, and it is through this cycle that all life evolves and grows. Without death, there would be no space for new life to emerge, no opportunity for growth and change. Death, therefore, is not the end, but the essential catalyst for creation. By embracing the cyclical nature of life and death, we can approach our own mortality with a sense of peace and acceptance. We realize that death is not something to be resisted or feared, but something to be welcomed as part of the larger dance of life. When we let go of our fear of death and embrace the inevitability of it, we are free to live fully in the present moment, knowing that every moment is precious and fleeting. Life becomes more vibrant and meaningful when we recognize the beauty in both life and death, and when we understand that they are not separate, but interdependent. The secret of life and death also lies in our ability to embrace impermanence. In the physical world, nothing lasts forever. All things are subject to change, decay, and eventually, death. This impermanence is not something to be feared, but something to be celebrated. It is in the transience of life that we find its true beauty. When we understand that all things are temporary, we begin to live more fully, appreciating each moment as it arises, without clinging to it or trying to hold on. This acceptance of impermanence allows us to experience life more deeply and meaningfully. When we cling to the illusion of permanence, we create suffering for ourselves. We resist the natural flow of life, trying to control it and make it conform to our desires. However, when we accept impermanence, we let go of the need to control and allow life to unfold as it will. This surrender is not about passivity, but about living with an open heart, fully engaged in the present moment, and open to whatever arises. By embracing impermanence, we learn to live more freely, without the fear of loss or change, and we experience the richness of life as it is. Ultimately, the secret of life and death is about living in harmony with the natural flow of existence. Life and death are not separate, but parts of the same continuum. They are both expressions of the same eternal truth, that all things are interconnected, and that life is a constant process of transformation and renewal. By understanding this, we can transcend our fear of death and embrace life more fully, living with a sense of peace and purpose. We come to see that life and death are not opposing forces, but partners in the ongoing dance of creation. In this realization, we find freedom, the freedom to live fully, to love deeply, and to experience the beauty of existence in all its forms. The nature of existence is a mystery that has fascinated human beings for millennia. We stand at the threshold of understanding, peering into the depths of what is beyond our immediate perception, yearning to know the truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of life. But the journey to uncover these truths is not a simple one. It requires a willingness to step into the unknown, to venture beyond the boundaries of what we know, and into realms that defy the limitations of the mind. This journey of exploration is the essence of spiritual awakening, a path that invites us to question, to seek, and to discover the deeper meaning of life. In every tradition and philosophy, there is an invitation to explore the mysteries of existence. Whether through meditation, prayer, self-inquiry, or scientific discovery, the journey of exploration is one that calls each of us to expand our consciousness and push beyond the limitations of our current understanding. To explore is to step into the unknown with an open heart, embracing uncertainty and trust that the journey itself will reveal the wisdom we seek. The exploration of existence is not just about finding answers, but about being open to the mysteries that unfold along the way. To truly explore the depths of existence, we must first recognize the vastness of the unknown. The more we seek to understand, the more we realize how much there is still to uncover. This realization can be humbling as we come to terms with the limits of our understanding. But it is also liberating. For in acknowledging the unknown, we free ourselves from the constraints of certainty and open ourselves to infinite possibilities. The invitation to explore is an invitation to expand our minds, our hearts, and our souls, and to embrace the unknown with curiosity and wonder. As we embark on the journey of exploration, we are called to let go of preconceived notions and fixed beliefs. The mind, in its desire for security, often clings to familiar ideas and concepts, seeking comfort in the known. But true exploration requires us to release these attachments and step into the unknown with humility and openness. To explore is to question everything we think we know, to challenge our assumptions, and to allow ourselves to be surprised by what we find. It is an act of surrender, of trusting that the path will unfold as we journey deeper into the mysteries of life. One of the greatest obstacles to exploration is the fear of the unknown. The unfamiliar can be frightening, and our minds are often quick to create stories and fears about what lies ahead. But the key to spiritual exploration is to face that fear with courage and curiosity. Instead of recoiling from the unknown, we are invited to step forward, trusting that the journey itself will teach us what we need to know. By letting go of fear and embracing the unknown, we open ourselves to new experiences, insights, and understandings that can transform our view of the world and our place within it. In this exploration, we come to realize that there is no final destination, no end point to our journey. The exploration of existence is not about reaching an end point, but about the continuous unfolding of our awareness and consciousness. With each step we take, we uncover new layers of understanding, deeper truths, and greater mysteries. The journey itself becomes the destination, and the act of exploring becomes a lifelong pursuit. We are constantly evolving, growing, and expanding as we seek to understand more about the world and the universe around us. As we explore, we also learn to trust in the wisdom of the universe. Every experience, every moment, carries with it the potential for growth and insight. The universe does not operate randomly or chaotically. It is an interconnected system of intelligence, order, and purpose. Each step we take on our journey of exploration brings us closer to understanding the deeper order of the universe and our place within it. Through exploration, we come to recognize the intelligence of life itself, a wisdom that guides us if we are willing to listen and trust. One of the greatest gifts of exploration is the ability to cultivate deeper self-awareness. As we journey into the unknown, we learn more about ourselves, our desires, our fears, and our potential. The process of exploration is not just about discovering external truths, but about uncovering the deeper layers of our own consciousness. By exploring our inner worlds, we gain insight into our true nature, our spiritual essence, and the greater purpose of our lives. The journey is as much about self-discovery as it is about discovering the mysteries of the universe. Exploration also teaches us the importance of presence. To truly explore, we must be fully present in each moment, fully engaged in the process of discovery. It is easy to become distracted by the past or the future, but the essence of exploration lies in the here and now. By being fully present, we can experience the world around us in all its beauty and complexity, and we can connect with the deeper currents of life that flow beneath the surface. Presence is the key to unlocking the wisdom of the universe and experiencing the fullness of existence. Through the journey of exploration, we come to understand that we are not separate from the universe, but an integral part of it. As we expand our consciousness and open ourselves to the mysteries of existence, we come to realize that we are connected to all that is. The universe is not something external to us, but a reflection of our own inner consciousness. When we explore the external world, we are also exploring the depths of our own being. The invitation to explore is an invitation to remember our true nature, to reconnect with the source of all existence, and to rediscover the unity of all life. In this exploration, we are also invited to let go of the illusion of control. The mind often seeks to control and manipulate the world around it, but true exploration requires surrendering the need to control. It is about allowing life to unfold as it will, trusting that the universe has a greater plan for us. By releasing the need for control, we open ourselves to the flow of life and allow ourselves to be guided by the wisdom of the universe. This surrender is not about passivity, but about trusting the journey and embracing the unknown with open arms. Ultimately, the invitation to explore is an invitation to live fully. To explore is to be alive, to embrace the mysteries of life, and to be open to the infinite possibilities that lie ahead. The journey of exploration is not just about discovering the answers to life's greatest questions, but about experiencing the fullness of life itself, in all its mystery, beauty, and wonder. We are invited to explore with curiosity, with courage, and with an open heart, knowing that the journey is just as important as the destination. The invitation to explore is a call to awaken. It is a call to step beyond the limitations of the known and to venture into the infinite expanse of the unknown. It is a journey that will continue for as long as we choose to walk it, and it is one that promises not just answers, but deeper questions, greater understanding, and profound wisdom. Through exploration, we come to understand that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The more we explore, the more we realize that the journey itself is the greatest gift, a journey that leads us to deeper truths, greater connection, and a more profound experience of existence.